"Jake, after 17 years, we're eliminating your position," my boss said. His tone flat, almost rehearsed, as if he'd said these words 100 times before. "Clean out your desk by end of day." Just like that. My name is Jake Wilson. I'm 54 years old, and up until about 10 minutes ago, I was the senior systems analyst at Meridian Technologies in Columbus, Ohio. A company I've poured nearly 2 decades of my life into. 17 years. That's long enough to watch a child grow into an adult, to build a home from scratch, to dedicate yourself to something you believe you're a part of. Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. Each of your shares is not only a motivation for us but also contributes to spreading value to the community. If you find this content useful, don't forget to watch the whole video, like, subscribe, and share with someone you think needs to hear this too. I wasn't just another employee. I was the one people came to when the servers crashed, when the CEO's password vanished into the void, when a holiday deployment went sideways at midnight. From the scratchy dial-up years to the complex dance of cloud migration, I was there, the silent anchor. While 3 different CEOs rotated through the corner office upstairs, I stayed where I was. Training new hires, rewriting outdated protocols, saving projects that were declared unsalvageable. Weekends, holidays, snowstorms. I worked through them all. Not once did I ask for a raise, a promotion, or even a word of thanks. So when Daniel, the current CEO, asked me to step into his office that morning, and I saw Vanessa from HR already seated across from his desk, clipboard in hand, expression carefully neutral, I didn't need a crystal ball. Before a single word was spoken, I knew. I could feel the floor shifting beneath me. But knowing doesn't soften the blow. Just gives you a second to brace for the impact. The air had changed weeks ago, though no one said anything outright. Conversations grew shorter when I entered the room. Meetings I used to lead were suddenly reassigned. The unspoken current was clear. Something was coming. And now it had finally arrived. "I understand completely," I said, offering a single nod that felt heavier than it should have. Then I turned and walked out of Daniel's office without another word. No anger. No pleading. No dramatic pause or request for explanation. Just a quiet acceptance, as if the story had already been written, and I was merely reading aloud the final chapter. Back at my desk, the atmosphere was thick, not with noise but with silence. The kind that prickles at the back of your neck. I could feel eyes flicking toward me and then snapping away just as quickly, as if contact might make them complicit. Most of them were younger employees, developers, analysts, fresh college hires, the ones I'd personally trained, mentored, stayed late for. They were good kids. Smart, eager, full of potential. But they had no idea what really lived beneath the surface of our systems. They didn't know about the original framework, about the back-end logic duct taped together in the early 2000s that still quietly powered half the company's operations. They didn't know how to trace the root causes buried under years of updates, patches, and forgotten log files. They couldn't navigate the sprawling maze of custom scripts I'd written, or the layers of admin credentials hidden behind recursive encryptions I'd designed to protect sensitive data, some of which even the executives had forgotten existed. Methodically, I began packing the fragments of my working life. No rush. I'd done everything with care for 17 years. No reason to stop now. First, the framed photo of my family taken during a summer vacation to Lake Erie. My son grinning with his arm around my shoulder before he left for college. Then the coffee mug he'd made in high school ceramics, a little lopsided, glazed in uneven blue, but it had held up better than most things. And finally, the small cactus perched beside my monitor. A stubborn little thing that somehow managed to survive 17 years of office life, bad coffee, and the endless hum of fluorescent lights. As I tucked the last of it into the cardboard box, I heard footsteps pause near my desk. It was Bethany from marketing. Her heels usually clicked with confidence, but now they slowed, uncertain. She looked at me with tight lips and sad eyes. "Jake, I just heard," she said quietly, as though afraid to speak too loud. "This is ridiculous. You practically built this place." I managed a faint smile. What could I say? She wasn't wrong. But in corporate halls, foundations are rarely noticed, until they're gone. I gave a half-hearted shrug, the kind that says more than words ever could. Companies change direction, I muttered, as if that could explain away 17 years of loyalty being discarded like last week's memos. Bethany wasn't buying it. Her eyebrows pulled together, lips trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. But without any warning, after everything you've done for this place. Her voice was rising now, too loud for comfort, too sincere to ignore. Heads were turning, whispers beginning to stir. I glanced around and offered her a small, tired smile. "It's fine," I said, my voice low and steady. But it wasn't fine. Not even close. Still, I wasn't about to become a cautionary tale, the guy who snapped on his last day. I'd leave the dignity in place, even if the job had been stripped from me. As I walked toward the elevators, the cardboard box in my arms balanced just so. I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. Daniel, the CEO, still wearing that same tailored blazer and artificial calm, had stepped out of his office. He wasn't there to say goodbye. He wasn't offering a handshake or a word of gratitude, or even the bare decency of eye contact. No, he was just standing there, arms folded, tracking me like a security camera, making sure the termination stuck. Making sure the old watchdog had really left the building. But here's what no one seemed to understand, what they'd never bothered to learn. Over the years, I had become the most indispensable person in the company. Not because I was flashy or innovative or had some MBA jargon to throw around in meetings. No, it was because I was thorough. I never cut corners. I documented everything. Every patch, every password change, every compliance review. I'd built out secure audit protocols years ago. Back when the legal department was scrambling during that internal scandal everyone pretended to forget. The one with the quietly settled lawsuit and the mysteriously restructured accounting team. I had been the one they came to in hushed tones back then. "We just need to track access," they'd whispered. Quietly. Discreetly. So I'd done it. And not just for that incident. I built it into the system, baked into the back end like a heartbeat no one knew was there. I didn't do it out of paranoia. I did it out of duty. But duty has a memory. And I kept copies. I always kept copies. Once I was outside, I didn't leave right away. I sat in my car with the engine off, watching the building. 12 stories of glass and steel, designed to look impressive but feel sterile. A place I'd spent more waking hours in than my own home. A place where my name had never made it to the plaque by the elevator, but my fingerprints were on every system that kept the lights on. I looked down at the lanyard now sitting useless in the passenger seat. The security badge I had surrendered just 15 minutes earlier had been renewed 16 times. One for every year of service. Each time with a new laminate photo, my hairline a little higher, my eyes a little more tired, but the name stayed the same. Jake Wilson. And apparently, none of that had meant a damn thing by Monday morning. Not to them anyway. But the systems still remembered. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot with slow, deliberate ease, as if the weight of 17 years was still riding shotgun beside me. The sun had slipped behind the clouds, casting the glass facade of Meridian Technologies in a dull, impersonal glow. They had no idea what Wednesday would bring. But I did. They thought today was the end of the story. It wasn't. Not even close. I'd been with Meridian back when it was just a modest 2-story operation tucked away in a sleepy business park on the edge of town. No company car fleet, no rooftop terrace, no corporate wellness initiatives. Just a handful of us, a cluttered server room, and a startup dream patched together with ambition and late nights. I was there when the carpet still smelled like new drywall and the network had fewer users than a neighborhood gaming forum. Back then, my daughter Olivia was in kindergarten, just learning to read. I used to pack her peanut butter sandwiches in the morning before heading into the office. Now she was finishing grad school, studying behavioral neuroscience at Northwestern. The years had gone by faster than I'd expected, each project blending into the next, each upgrade marking another birthday, another memory. The company grew, and I grew right along with it. From technician to analyst to senior lead. I climbed the ladder without ever asking for anything more than a little respect and a stable connection. I'd gotten calls from recruiters over the years, tempting offers, big titles, promises of greener pastures. But I turned them all down. Loyalty mattered to me. Still does even now. My wife Andrea used to joke that the servers were my second family. "You talk more to those machines than you do to me," she'd say with a teasing grin as I dragged my laptop onto the couch after dinner. She wasn't entirely wrong. But it wasn't just the machines, it was the people they supported, the unseen infrastructure, the quiet victories that made the place feel like it was mine too. I knew every system, every undocumented workaround, every legacy patch that had long since slipped off the radar. I knew which switches needed a jiggle and which virtual servers were held together by digital duct tape and a prayer. The executives didn't know about those things, didn't care to. They only saw what worked. Until it didn't. The infrastructure I built had survived 3 acquisitions, 4 branding overhauls, and a revolving door of leadership ideas that sounded revolutionary on paper but were quietly dropped once the excitement wore off. Cloud first, mobile ready, microservices. Every buzzword parade marched through and disappeared. But my systems stayed. I made sure they did. Daniel came in about 5 years ago, the youngest CEO in the company's history. MBA from some ivy-covered tower and all the charm of a TED Talk. He was slick, ambitious, and obsessed with optimization. He didn't call us a department. He called us IT resources. That told me everything I needed to know. He talked about streamlining, digital transformation, and agile efficiency, as if saying the words made them real. First, I tried to meet him halfway. I gave him reports, diagrams, breakdowns of our architecture. I showed him how legacy systems had been customized over time, how we'd layered new tools over old code, how delicate some of the integrations really were. But he didn't listen. Not really. He nodded, asked performative questions, then circled back to his favorite phrase. "Can we do it cheaper?" I should have seen it coming sooner. But when you've spent this long building something, you want to believe it can last. You want to believe people will see the value, not just the cost. So, I drove home that Monday evening with the same calm that had carried me through 100 fire drills. But inside something had shifted. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was calculating. Because what they didn't realize was that the person they pushed out the door was the only one left who still remembered where all the wires were buried. And the best part, Wednesday was just around the corner. "We need to future-proof," Daniel would say in meetings. His voice crisp and rehearsed, like he was pitching to a room of venture capitalists instead of seasoned professionals. He always looked right past me when he said it, scanning the room for approval from the younger team leads, the ones who nodded eagerly, clinging to buzzwords like life rafts. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent the last decade building systems durable enough to survive everything from ransomware threats to poorly thought-out executive whims. But suddenly my experience was outdated. My presence, inconvenient. About 6 months ago, Daniel brought in a consultant, Jason Phillips. The kind of guy who looked like he'd stepped out of a corporate lifestyle magazine. Tailored navy suit, cufflinks that caught the light just right. Hair so perfect it made you suspicious. His handshake was firm, his grin practiced, and his Stanford degree was splashed across his LinkedIn header like a billboard. Digital transformation strategist. It read, whatever that meant this quarter. Jason didn't waste time. He moved through the building like a man on a mission, laptop always open, muttering to Daniel in hallways, conference rooms, even in the break room while people tried to microwave their lunches. They huddled often, doors closed, voices low, but they always seemed to stop talking just a little too suddenly when I happened to walk by. I wasn't paranoid. I'd seen this pattern before. About 3 months ago, I started noticing little changes. Nothing loud. Nothing that would raise a red flag to anyone who wasn't paying very close attention. My administrative permissions, the ones I'd held for over a decade, began to shift. First, I couldn't access certain subdirectories without a secondary key. Then, specific tools required 2-factor logins I hadn't needed before. Routine maintenance tasks started bouncing back with insufficient permissions errors. They were phasing me out. Quietly. Strategically. I could have raised a hand, sent an email, demanded clarification. But I didn't. Just watched. And documented everything. Every access log, every system change, every breadcrumb they left behind. Because while they thought I was becoming obsolete, I was simply stepping back into observation mode, the way I used to when I was called in to clean up someone else's disaster. One evening, I was sitting on the porch with Andrea, a cold beer in hand, watching the sun bleed into the horizon behind the trees. Our neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where time seemed to slow down just enough to make you forget about everything beyond the driveway. She turned to me, her voice gentle but pointed. "You've been quiet lately. Distracted. Is everything okay at work?" I stared into the last inch of beer in the bottle, watching the way the amber caught the light. "Yeah," I said after a moment. "Just changes." She studied me, not pressing but not convinced either. She knew me better than anyone. She knew when I was holding something back. And the truth was, something was brewing. I didn't know what Daniel and Jason were planning in full, but I knew enough to feel the ground shifting beneath me. And if they thought I'd go quietly, they hadn't been paying attention. I nodded, sipping my beer. Just changes. Nothing I haven't seen before. But these changes felt different. I was being sidelined in meetings. Emails about system upgrades stopped including me. Younger team members were assigned to projects I would normally handle. Then I found it. A company-wide memo about modernization initiatives that had never been shared with me. It outlined a complete restructuring of the IT department under new leadership. Jason Phillips. My position wasn't even on the organizational chart. That same day I discovered something else. While running a routine security scan, one of those background tasks no one else bothered with anymore, I noticed unusual patterns in our financial software. Regular transfers to a vendor I didn't recognize. Apex Solutions Group. A quick search showed it was registered just last year with a business address that led to a UPS store. The authorized payments had started small but were growing each month. I didn't say anything, just noted it, copied the records, and continued watching. Sometimes the quiet man in the corner sees everything precisely because everyone thinks he sees nothing. The morning after I was let go, I sat in my home office staring at my personal laptop. No alarm had woken me. No commute waited. Just silence and the weight of what had happened. Andrea brought me coffee, placing it beside me without a word. After 19 years of marriage, she knew when I needed space. "I'm going to the store," she said eventually. "Need anything?" I shook my head. After she left, I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a flash drive, one of several I kept secure. Company policies strictly prohibited removing data, but years ago, when the legal team needed an audit system for tracking potential insider threats, I'd been clear about needing off-site backups. They'd signed off on it, then promptly forgotten. I plugged it in and began reviewing the files. Internal emails, meeting minutes I shouldn't have had access to, financial records that normal employees would never see. There it was. A full history of payments to Apex Solutions Group. Nearly $1.8 million over 18 months. The approval chain led directly to our CFO, Brian Wilcox. I dug deeper, cross-referencing dates and figures until the pattern emerged. The payments aligned perfectly with a series of software license renewals for systems we used company-wide. But the amounts were inflated, sometimes by 15%, sometimes by 20%. Small enough not to raise immediate flags, large enough to add up. I pulled up the business registration for Apex Solutions Group. The listed owner was Thomas Wilcox. A quick social media search confirmed what I suspected. Brian's brother-in-law. They were siphoning company funds through fake markup on legitimate expenses. I leaned back in my chair, feeling something shift inside me. Not anger exactly. Something colder, more focused. For 17 years I'd solved problems, fixed systems, protected data. I'd been the reliable one, the steady presence who never caused waves. And they discarded me like outdated hardware. My phone buzzed with a text from Steven, a junior analyst I'd mentored over the past 2 years. "Sorry about yesterday. Total BS what they did. Phillips is already moving into your old office." I set the phone down without responding. The pieces all fit now. Daniel and the CFO needed me gone before anyone could connect the dots on their scheme. They probably thought the evidence would disappear with me, that I was just some aging tech guy who didn't understand modern finance. I opened my email and began drafting a message to the board of directors, then stopped, finger hovering over the send button. Too direct. Too easy to dismiss as the bitter accusations of a fired employee. I needed leverage, precision, a way to expose the fraud that couldn't be ignored or covered up. I deleted the draft and started making plans. Tomorrow was Wednesday, board meeting day. Quarterly financials would be presented. Bonuses would be approved. Perfect timing. I closed the laptop and walked to the living room window, looking out at the neighborhood where we'd raised our kids and built our life. For the first time since yesterday, I smiled. Wednesday morning, I sat in my car across the street from Meridian's headquarters, watching employees stream through the revolving doors. In the passenger seat was my laptop, logged into an email account I'd created years ago for security testing. One that appeared to come from an internal company domain but wasn't tracked in the main directory. At exactly 9:15 a.m., I sent my first move, an email to Daniel with the subject line, "Financial irregularities. Urgent review needed." It was a basic summary of what I'd found regarding the Apex payments. I included just enough detail to be credible but kept the brother-in-law connection out of it. If Daniel was involved, he'd panic. If he wasn't, he'd investigate. Either way, I'd learned something. By 9:45, my phone rang. Daniel's number. I let it go to voicemail. His message was terse. "Jake, we need to discuss your email immediately. Call me back." I didn't. Instead, I drove to a coffee shop, set up my laptop and waited. At 10:30, another email appeared. This one from Vanessa in HR. "Mr. Wilson, we've received concerning communication from you that potentially violates your separation agreement. Please cease all contact with Meridian employees and remember your confidentiality obligations. Any further communications may result in legal action." So that's how they were playing it. Threaten, dismiss, isolate. I hadn't signed any separation agreement. At noon, I drove to my bank and accessed my safe deposit box. Inside was another backup. Older, but with critical information I hadn't included on my regular drives. Among the files were original security protocols I designed, including documentation of who had access to what systems and when changes were made. According to these records, Brian Wilcox had personally requested expanded access to the financial approval systems 18 months ago, right when the Apex payments began. Back home, I found 3 more missed calls. Daniel, Vanessa, and now Jason Phillips. I hadn't expected him to get involved so quickly. Interesting. I checked my personal email to find a message from Steven marked urgent. "Jake, they're saying you sent some crazy email about financial fraud. Phillips called an emergency meeting. Everyone's talking. They're pulling your access to everything, even historical stuff. We need to do our jobs. What's going on?" Poor kid. Caught in the crossfire. I sent a brief reply. "Don't get involved, Steven. Just watch." 3 p.m. my home phone rang. A number I hadn't used for business in years. I picked up but said nothing. "Jake, it's Brian Wilcox." His voice was steady, controlled. "We should talk about your concerns. I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Is that what you call it?" "Yes." "Look, transition periods are always difficult. If you have questions about company finances, there are proper channels, like the board." I interrupted. "Silence then. The board doesn't need to be bothered with operational details. Why don't we meet tomorrow? Just you and me. We can clear this up." "Sorry, I'm busy tomorrow," I said. "Besides, I think the board might actually be very interested in Apex Solutions Group and your brother-in-law." The sharp intake of breath told me everything. "You're making a serious mistake," he said finally. "We can make this right. Generous severance, references, whatever you need." "Goodbye, Brian," I said and hung up. Within 10 minutes, Vanessa emailed again. Suddenly, my severance package had doubled, with an attached agreement requiring my complete confidentiality regarding all company matters. They were scrambling now. But they still thought they were dealing with a simple extortion attempt. They had no idea what was coming. Thursday morning brought clarity and confirmation. I'd spent the night combing through years of data, connecting dots I'd previously overlooked. The Apex scheme wasn't Brian's first creative accounting project. 3 years ago, shortly after he became CFO, another pattern emerged. Consulting fees to a firm called Lakeside Business Solutions. Different name, same game. Inflated invoices for services partially or never rendered. I traced the registration for Lakeside. This one led to Patricia Wilcox, Brian's wife. The woman was apparently CEO of a company that had no website, no employees, and a virtual office address. But the bigger revelation came when I dug into email archives. Daniel hadn't just been aware of these arrangements. He'd helped facilitate them. In exchange, his department received budget increases while others faced cuts. He'd been brought in specifically because the previous director had started asking questions about IT expenditures. Even Jason Phillips was connected. His consulting firm had been hired through an unusual process that bypassed normal procurement channels. His real role wasn't modernizing IT. It was eliminating the one person who might notice the financial patterns: me. The scheme was elegant in its simplicity. Create legitimate-seeming vendors, approve inflated payments, and split the difference. Since actual services were being provided, just at marked-up rates, auditors scanning for completely fraudulent charges would miss it. Over 3 years, they diverted nearly $4.3 million. I gathered everything into a comprehensive report, spreadsheets showing the pattern of increases, business registrations linking the companies to Brian's family, email exchanges showing Daniel's knowledge and participation. Then I did something they wouldn't expect. I contacted Robert Chen, a board member I'd worked with years ago during a security implementation. He was semi-retired now, but still attended quarterly meetings. "Jake Wilson," he said, answering on the second ring. "Long time. Heard you left Meridian." "Not by choice," I replied. "Robert, I need 15 minutes of your time." "It's important." Silence then. This about why Brian and Daniel have been huddled together looking stressed. "Board meeting was tense yesterday." "Probably." He chuckled. "Always figured you knew where the bodies were buried. Where can we meet?" An hour later, we sat in a park 3 miles from headquarters. I handed him a sealed envelope containing a printed summary and a flash drive. "That's everything," I said. "Dates, amounts, connections. I'm not looking for my job back. I'm not looking for money. I just want the right people to know." Robert studied me. "Why come to me?" "Because you actually read audit reports. I've watched you in meetings. You ask questions." He nodded slowly. "There's an emergency board session tomorrow. Finance committee review." "Convenient timing, Jake," he said, pocketing the envelope. "If this checks out, there will be serious consequences." "I'm counting on it." As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Andrea. "Someone named Jason Phillips came by the house looking for you. Said it was urgent. I told him you were out. They were getting desperate." But that afternoon, I received job offers from 2 competing firms, both for positions well above my previous role, both offering substantial signing bonuses. Word had gotten around about my sudden availability. I ignored them for now. This wasn't about finding another job. It was about finishing what they had started. That night, using credentials that should have been revoked, but weren't, sloppy IT transition. "Jason, I accessed the company's email server one last time and scheduled a message to be delivered to every board member at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Before you approve Q2 bonuses, read this." Attached was my full report. Friday morning dawned clear and bright. I sat on my porch with coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up. No alarm clock, no commute, just waiting. At precisely 8 a.m., my scheduled email delivered its payload to the board members. By 8:17, my phone began to ring. Numbers I didn't recognize. Likely board members' assistants scrambling to reach me. I let them all go to voicemail. At 9 a.m., the emergency finance committee meeting would begin. Robert Chen would be there with my documentation in hand, watching reactions as my email was discovered and discussed. At 9:32, Stephen texted, "Police are here. Wilcox and Daniel being questioned in conference rooms. Phillips looking sick. What did you do?" I didn't respond. The wheels were turning exactly as I'd anticipated. By 10 a.m., Meridian's general counsel called. Unlike the others, I answered this one. "Mr. Wilson, this is Patricia Graves from Legal. We need you to come in immediately to discuss information you've provided to the board." "I'm available by phone," I replied. "This really requires an in-person discussion." "No, it doesn't," I interrupted calmly. "Everything I know is in that report. Everything I have is already backed up in multiple secure locations. If anything happens to me or my family, additional copies go to the SEC, IRS, and 3 news outlets." Silence. "Mr. Wilson," she finally said, her voice carefully measured. "The board is taking this extremely seriously. They've already placed several executives on administrative leave pending investigation. They would appreciate your cooperation." "I've cooperated fully by providing complete documentation. My part is done." After she hung up, I drove to a diner 20 miles outside Columbus. No sense being easily found today. Over lunch, news began breaking on local business sites. Meridian Technologies executives under investigation for financial irregularities. No names yet, but that would come. At 2 p.m., Robert Chen called. "It's a bloodbath," he said without preamble. "Brian confessed once we confronted him with your evidence. Trying to cut a deal, blaming Daniel for pressuring him. Daniel's denying everything. And Phillips claims he was just a consultant who had no knowledge of financial matters. Board isn't buying it. We've suspended all 3 pending further investigation. The money forensic accountants are coming in Monday. Early estimates suggest at least $4.5 million diverted over 3 years. Maybe more." I nodded to myself. I'd been close. "The board wants to talk to you," Robert continued. "About coming back. Not just to your old position. They're creating a new chief security officer role, reporting directly to the board." I'd anticipated this possibility, but still found myself surprised. "I'll think about it," I said. That evening I told Andrea everything. She listened without interrupting, then asked, "What do you want to do?" Good question. The revenge part was complete. The people who pushed me out were themselves being pushed out, likely facing criminal charges. Justice had been served, cold and precise. But returning to Meridian meant walking back into the place that had discarded me after 17 years of service. Could I do that? Did I want to? "I need time to decide," I said finally. Later that night, I opened my laptop one last time and posted a single message to my otherwise dormant LinkedIn profile. Never burn bridges. Just let them collapse under the weight of their own greed. Within minutes, former colleagues began reaching out. Word was spreading. The quiet systems guy had brought down 3 executives without raising his voice. By Monday, everyone would know exactly who they'd underestimated. Monday morning, I walked into Meridian's headquarters wearing a suit I hadn't needed in years. The security guard did a double take, then quickly printed me a visitor badge. "Welcome back, Mr. Wilson," he said with newfound respect. The elevator ride to the executive floor was quiet. I'd never had reason to visit this level before. Now I was expected in the boardroom. 10 board members sat around a polished table. Robert Chen nodded slightly as I entered. The interim CEO, previously the COO, looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Wilson," she began. "Thank you for coming. The situation you've brought to light is unprecedented." I remained silent. "The full extent of the fraud appears worse than initially reported," she continued. "The forensic team has identified nearly $5.2 million in diverted funds. Criminal charges are being prepared." Still I waited. Robert cleared his throat. "Jake, the board has unanimously voted to create a new executive position. Chief Information Security Officer. Full executive privileges. reporting structure directly to the board. We'd like to offer you the role. I set my folder on the table. Inside, you'll find my conditions, I said. Non-negotiable. The CEO opened it, scanning quickly. Her eyebrows rose. Full audit authority across all departments. Independent budget veto power on financial technology decisions. I nodded once. This is unusual, she said. So was embezzling $5.2 million, I replied. That happened because no one was watching. Now someone will be. The room fell silent. You have until noon, I said, standing. I have other offers. As I turned to leave, Robert asked, Did you plan this all along, Jake? Paused at the door. I didn't plan to be fired after 17 years. Everything after that was just me doing what I've always done. Identifying system vulnerabilities and implementing appropriate security measures. At 11:47 they called. They'd accepted every condition. 6 months later, I sat in my new corner office reviewing security protocols for the upcoming quarter. The view overlooked the Columbus skyline, a daily reminder of how much had changed. Brian Wilcox had pled guilty to multiple fraud charges. In exchange for cooperation, he'd receive a reduced sentence, still significant. Daniel was fighting the charges, insisting he was unaware of the scheme despite the evidence. Jason Phillips had fled to Brazil, but was being extradited. The money had been recovered. Most of it anyway. Enough that the company avoided serious financial damage. My former team now reported to me. Though I'd promoted Steven to run day-to-day operations, the kid had potential. Just needed someone to see it. A knock at my door drew my attention. Andrea stood there smiling. Ready for lunch? She asked. I nodded, grabbing my jacket. As we walked through the IT department, conversations quieted briefly. Not from fear but respect. These people knew what had happened. Knew I could have destroyed the company instead of saving it. In the elevator, Andrea squeezed my hand. Happy? I considered the question. The anger that had driven me those first few days after being fired had faded. What remained wasn't exactly happiness. More like satisfaction. Completion. I'm good, I said. Outside, the October sun warmed our faces as we walked to a nearby restaurant. My phone buzzed with a message from Robert Chen. Board approved your security budget increase. Unanimous vote. I smiled slightly. No arguments, no questions, just trust. Andrea noticed my expression. What is it? Nothing, I said, sliding the phone back into my pocket. Just thinking about bridges. Some collapse under their own weight. Others, once repaired, become stronger than they ever were before. I built this one right this time. Thank you for staying with us. If you find it interesting and useful, please subscribe, like and share so you don't miss the next video. Thanks.